Verse 15, and the water in the skin was used up, and she placed the boy under one of the shrubs. I'm sure they went through that bottle of water pretty quickly. You know, in the wilderness, you use up your resources quickly. They don't last long in the wilderness. And again, when we're in a wilderness season in life, we use up our resources, our emotional resources, or maybe your financial resources. It gets all used up very quickly. Then she went and she sat down across from him at a distance of about a bow shot, for she said to herself, "Let me not see the death of the boy." So she sat opposite him and lifted her voice and wept. You know, in the wilderness seasons of life, we can lose all hope. We can suffer despair. We can feel like there's no way out. There's no way we're going to survive. There's no way we're going to make it. It can be emotional for us. We just sit and cry. You're just so overwhelmed. Feel like giving up. And here's the thing. Here's what Hagar learned and Ishmael learned during their time in the wilderness. In the wilderness, you're never alone. You're never alone. God is with you. God sees you. God hears you. And God will get you through. Again, it's in the wilderness that we learn, the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. My Lord will provide for all of my needs. You learn that in the wilderness, when all hope is gone, when all the resources are dried up, when you don't know how you're going to get through the day. You learn, the Lord is my shepherd. Now watch what happens here in verse 17. And God heard the voice of the lad. Then the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said to her, I love this, "What ails you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is." I mean, here she is. Her son's on a bush, under a bush, a bow shot away, however far that is. And she's sitting, across from him. She can't look because she knows he's going to die any minute. She's going to die. She's laying there. She's weeping. She's crying. And God says, "What's wrong, Hagar? Don't be afraid." It's such a casual question. God's not in despair here. God hasn't lost all hope like Hagar. "What ails you, Hagar? What's wrong? Don't be afraid." The way that he asked this question reminds me of the time when Jesus is on the boat on the Sea of Galilee with the disciples. Remember that story? And they get caught in the storm, and all of the disciples think that they're going to die, that they're going to perish in this storm. Remember that? And what's Jesus doing? He's sleeping in the stern of the boat. Mark's gospel says he's sleeping on a pillow. He brought a pillow with him. He planned on napping. He knew there was going to be a storm, but he planned on napping. And the disciples, they finally wake Jesus up in desperation. And what do they say to Jesus? "Don't you care that we're perishing?" And Jesus gets up and he calms the storm with a word. And then he turns to his disciples and says, "What were you afraid of?" Just so casual. What were you afraid of? Jesus had told them, we're going to go to the other side. He didn't say we're going to go out to the middle and we're going to sink and drown, a terrible death in a storm. That's the plan. He said we're going to go to the other side. There's another story that I love in Mark's Gospel, Mark chapter 9. This one's crazy. A demon-possessed kid is brought to Jesus, and we're told in Mark 9 that the kid is laying on the ground at the feet of Jesus. There's a crowd gathered around. The kid's dad is there. The kid is on the ground. He's demon-possessed. It says that he is convulsing violently. It says that he's writhing on the ground and he's foaming at the mouth. And then it says, and Jesus looks at the dad and says, "How long has this been happening?" Isn't that crazy? Like you and I, we'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, yo, what's going on? And Jesus, how long has this been happening to him? Jesus isn't freaked out. like we are. He's not worried. He's not troubled. He's not full of despair. He hasn't lost hope. Hagar thinks that she and her son are about to die at any moment. And the Lord says, hey, what's wrong? Don't be afraid. And then look what he says in verse 18. Arise, lift up the lad and hold him with your hand, for I will make a great nation of him. Hagar, don't you remember what my promise is? Don't you remember I said I will make of him a great nation? Don't you remember what my plan is for your son? It may look like to you right now in the wilderness, it may look to you that I have forgotten you, or that I have forgotten my plans for you, or that I have forgotten my plans for your son. It may look like the end, but I still have all these plans. I'm never going to leave you. I'm never going to forsake you. There might be times where you think or you feel forsaken, or you feel left, or you feel hopeless, you feel despair. There's no way out. But God would say, don't you remember my plan for you? Don't you remember my promises to you? Now look at verse 19. We're almost finished. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and she filled the skin with water, and she gave the lad a drink. That well of water was there all along. Hagar just couldn't see it. She just couldn't see it. You know, when you're in the middle of a mess, it's hard to see things. It's hard to see things that are right there. It's hard to see past your misery. And we need the Lord to open our eyes so that we can see the relief that He has provided for us, the relief that's been there all along for us. And so God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer, and he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran. As I said, that's the Arabian Peninsula, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Listen, just in closing here, Jesus said, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. The well of Jesus Christ has always been there for us. Always there. And maybe you're in a wilderness season right now. Many people are in a wilderness right now. 2020 has been a wilderness for so many of us. And maybe you're in a wilderness where you feel isolated, you feel alone, you feel directionless, like you're just drifting, you feel hopeless, you're full of despair, you can't see how you can possibly survive, you're at the end. Listen, you need to drink from the well of Jesus Christ. You need the living water that Jesus Christ provides. And it is available to you. Jesus Christ will satisfy your soul and refresh you while you're in the wilderness. The passage doesn't say that God miraculously snatched Hagar and Ishmael out of the wilderness and put them in a Holiday Inn. They're refreshed while they're in the wilderness. Jesus Christ will refresh you while you're in a wilderness season, if you come to Him and you drink.